Hi guys, welcome to the first setup of 2022. For January we are visiting the Czech Republic, so stick around if you want to learn a bit about the country and see the way it inspires me for setting up my bullet journal spreads. So my basic idea for this journal and all the spreads in it this year, to make it a little bit different to last year, I thought I would try and focus a little bit more on a fairy tale vibe or a storybook kind of idea. And so I did talk about that a little bit in my last video as well, where I set up the front of my journal. If you haven't seen that, I'll leave a link down in the description box so you can see the beginning pages. And then basically I'm going to imagine that each country that I visit virtually is like a new book that my little tiny character at the front of my journal, which, side note, I would like to explore a little bit more about her character and her character design, so that's probably coming in the future, and then maybe we can choose a name for her or something like that. So she has gone straight into her first book, and I basically hope to capture a little bit of fairy tale sort of historical feeling to portray as many of the places that I visit as I can. So just trying to capture the beauty of each place in a sweet, magical way, hopefully. So I'm really happy with how those first few pages of the setup turned out, both in the colours and the style. So I'm hoping to continue that path in the first country that we visit, which is this one, the Czech Republic. And it is such a perfect country to start this idea with because, wow, the places here look exactly like a fairy tale. So anyway, let's get on with the cover page. Now, Czechia, or Czech Republic, is in Central Europe, and it's definitely known for its beauty with ancient castles and gorgeous landscapes. And I felt like I had to showcase the beautiful capital city of Prague in my cover page because it was just stunning, and it's immediately where I think of going. If I think of Czech Republic, I think most people would think of Prague first. So the buildings, they're colourful and detailed, the streets are cobblestoned, and the trees are everywhere in between. And I must say, I absolutely love it when a city is perched on a river like this, and with the beautiful bridges that cross. This one is just so picturesque. So the river here is called the Vltava River, and it's the longest river in the Czech Republic, and it also runs through lots of beautiful spots in the country. And a special mention does go to Český Krumlov, which is a fairy tale town yet again, with all these beautiful Renaissance, Gothic and Baroque style buildings, most with terracotta roofs and a castle, all clustered together along the river. So because of that place being absolutely beautiful and very fairy tale like, I was a little bit torn whether to display that one or Prague, but in the end I just found this image of Prague and I decided to portray this because it includes the Charles Bridge and it captures some of the trees and beautiful buildings in the background, and I just thought it would be a really nice entry point to this particular country. And I've put our little girl who's jumped into the book, and she's sitting on the grass admiring the beauty before she goes exploring. So she's there in the foreground on the grass and just really appreciating the beauty of this, what looks like an ancient town to me, like she's jumped into a medieval book, you know, about princes and princesses and things like that. So I think it's a good start to it. So as you can see, I first sketched this out and used my Pigma Micron fine liners. I'm still going in this brown a lot because I really like the effect of that it had in my first few pages of the setup. So I'm stuck with that. I've stuck with that because I love it. And then all the black areas where I want a lot more darkness, I'm using the black Pigma Micron. So I'm really enjoying that little process right now. And then I just wanted to give splashes of color to try and get that feeling that I got from my Belgium color last January. The colors were just nice and I liked the amount of detail in it, and I kind of pulled back and didn't go too much detail. So I was trying to do that again in this. I think I definitely went over detailed, but I really like it, so it's okay. But yeah, and then I'm just using my watercolors to try and add just a small combination of colors into the piece. And if you're interested in knowing what particular colors I used a couple of gouache products, which were turquoise blue and permanent yellow deep. And then the rest were watercolors, which were sap green, Prussian blue, and cadmium red. So just with those 5 colors, I was able to create most of this. I mean, it is still quite a lot of colors because they're mostly primary anyway, so I could make whatever I wanted from them. But I just thought I'd let you know in case you wanted to do a similar color palette in your own work. And now that I have finished that cover piece, I am just taking the tape off, the funnest part, scanning it in so that I can remember this cover page forever and also apply it to my digital theme, which if you haven't known, that I actually create these as digital themes for you to buy and print out and put into your own journal. So if you're interested in that, the link to my shop is always down in the description. And then with the cover page, I decided to put the word January across like it was a little sign on the post in the foreground. So I cut some gold paper and I'll stick that on soon. But I just thought I'd let you know now what I've done as to adding the name in the cover page, because I do like to do that. I like to hide it in the image itself somewhere usually. I also usually like to add a Dutch door on my cover page. I find it is very easy to flick to the particular month that way, and it adds some little fun interest, I think, to the cover spread. So using that same gold card that I have, which is very shiny, I've stuck that down onto the page beneath and cut a nice semicircle across the edge of the picture. And I really like this gold. It's quite complementary with the colors in the piece. The only problem with it is because it was so shiny, it was so hard to get my marker or my calligraphy pen to show up on there. And after like an hour, it still wasn't dry. So what I did was I cut some sticky tape and stuck it over the top, hoping that would work. And amazingly it did. I don't know if this is a thing you do, but it means now that it's not going to smudge over time. So I was just really careful. Went over it a few times with the calligraphy saying writing January, and then just stuck some sticky tape over the top, and now it is fine. And here's a look at the final cover spread. Now moving on to our next page, which is the calendar spread. Now this calendar spread is a monthly overview of the current month that we're in. I only keep the boxes quite small on this page because all I use it for really is to put birthdays to remember what's coming up in the month, and so I'll know which presents to buy and who to message happy birthday with, things like that. So even occasions I like to put on there sometimes as well, date nights or specific things coming up in the month that you haven't planned into your weekly just yet. So this is a good monthly overview, and the creature that I decided to draw on this one was their national animal. And surprisingly, it's not an animal that's actually around Czech Republic. Their national animal is their national emblem and their symbol, and it's a mythical creature called the double-tailed lion. It's featured on their crest, and it symbolizes power and sovereignty. So I thought it only fitting that he should be wearing a crown. So I put a crown on this guy and drew him in a very regal position of power on this page. I used a reference for a normal lion, and then I just sort of imagined a nice swirly tail coming up behind, or two tails. And then with his crown on, I thought it tied really nicely in with the gold as well. Because I'm picturing these books as really old antique books, I wanted to get that sort of ornateness happening on the page. So I've chosen to do an illuminated J, which I have been loving doing lately. I think I've done a few illuminated letters, and they're just so much fun to do. So the illuminated letter is basically when you're making a decorative letter as the first letter on the page. So back in the old manuscripts, they would have, large colourful areas in gold, or like florals or animals, just representative things inside to form the letter or around the letter. And in this case, I've gone for a nice floral J because that says royal and it says intricate antique book to me. Probably you'll see a lot of that this year, I think, because it just makes sense to do that in these old vintage books, especially when they're about royalty, like this one must be, because we've got the king lion right there on the page. I'm also just using a few colors on this spread. I'm just using that brown, the black, and then I have it looks orange on the barrel, but it's really like a cinnamon sort of color, and it's called Sanguine, and that's a Pitt artist pen. And I'm using just a little beige on there, but that ends up getting disappeared anyway because I didn't like it. I wanted to make it more dark. It wasn't looking quite right just having these fine lines at the top, so I ended up colouring in that in the black. And then once I had that strong black in at the top, I really liked it, so I wanted to throw in more down on that left side to sort of balance out the piece. It was looking a little bit top heavy, and it really follows that shape nicely. So I started out not liking this page, but now I'm really happy with it. And here's a look at the finished calendar spread. So over onto the next page for my needs and wants and meal planner spread, I thought I would create a banner across the top that has an old world vibe of a few famous elements from the country itself. So the main item that I'm going to draw on the needs and wants spread is a Czech or Bohemian glass vase. And I never realized that Czech or Bohemian glass was so highly recognized. It's known for its quality and its craftsmanship, and it's really the ideal thing to buy if you were hoping to get a nice souvenir from the Czech Republic. I'd had heard of Bohemian glass before, but I had no idea how important it was or where it came from. And to be honest, it seemed really bizarre that last month in Italy I was talking about Venetian glass. So it was just crazy to find that fact out just the month later. So this glass work looks amazing and such ornate, incredible patterns on it. So I kind of used some of those to tie across the background. And then I also wish I didn't forget this part, but I wanted to add a clock into the spread to represent the awesome medieval astronomical clock that is attached to the old town hall in Prague. There was a weird tale about how the clockmaker had his eyes burnt out with a hot poker by the councillors because they were afraid he would go and make another clock somewhere else, making their clock less unique. I really hope that's not true, but so anyway, I forgot to put that in, which is a shame, but I still like the ornateness of the spread and feel like it's in keeping with the storybook idea so far. Did you know that the Czech Republic drinks the most beer, or pivo in Czech, per capita of any country in the world? Then the next interesting fact that I learnt about beer was that the Pilsner beer that we know today actually began in 1842 in the town of Pilsen. So in this village, they invented a very light golden beer called Pilsner Urquell, and that led to all these other beers around the world opening up that were light in color. So 9 out of 10 beers now around the world are that way because they invented Pilsner back in the day. So I was really, intrigued by that because all the beer before that was really dark. So cheers to that. And in Czech, we would say na zdraví. I also discovered that you can actually have a beer bath in Czechia in a beer spa. And apparently it's really rejuvenating for the pores of the skin and can help things like psoriasis, cellulite, acne, increases circulation, and it's also supposed to be really good for the hair too, making it shiny and strong. So I seriously want to try that when I go to Czechia one day. And on to our next page, which is my favorite. This is my mind map spread, and if you've been with me for a while, this is basically other people's brain dump area. It's a spot where I put things that don't have a proper place elsewhere in the journal, and I can just get things out of my brain onto this page. So I also learnt that this European country used to be known as Bohemia, which I had no idea about at all, and I love Bohemian style, both in fashion and home decor, so I had to delve a little deeper into where that came from. And in case you weren't aware, the term Bohemian originated by the French in regards to the gypsy style of dress by people who they believed were from Bohemia, which meant Czech Republic. So that was news to me. I just never really thought about why it was called Bohemian. And then I started thinking of Bohemian Rhapsody, and I absolutely adore Queen and that song. So I obviously started thinking, what does that even mean? And learnt that the term Bohemian basically means free-spirited, wandering artist, which I just love. Anyway, so now for this mind map page, because I was so fascinated by the Bohemian origin, I thought it would be cool to illustrate a Bohemian girl. And then I was really surprised to find out that a Czech artist was behind the very famous creations that I've been looking at for inspiration for all my recent Art Nouveau pieces. I've been working on a whole series of Art Nouveau pieces, if you've stuck around since last year. But it turns out that Alphonse Mucha was a Czech painter, illustrator, and graphic artist living in Paris during the Art Nouveau period, and his illustrations and decorative poster designs became the most recognizable of the Art Nouveau period. So in discovering this, I thought it would be cool to create my own gypsy girl in an Art Nouveau way, inspired by one of his beautiful pieces. I just really found that fascinating that after all this time, all these recognized images, like I looked at this image several times when I was trying to create my own Art Nouveau style, and I couldn't believe it that I didn't know who did this piece, and I didn't realize how important it was for the Art Nouveau period. So yeah, I was just like literally flabbergasted. So I was very happy to create this one. What I did was I used the original piece as my basis, and then instead of doing the face from that piece, I thought I would put a more modern face on it so that it was more my own, and I would draw that part quite realistically and then leave the rest in that sort of Art Nouveau, very graphic line work way. And this was so much fun to do. So I'm using my Prismacolor pencils for the skin and the face, and then pretty much just my micron liners and a couple of Pitt Artist markers to colour it in afterwards. Here I'm titling the page at the top in the words Mind Map using my Tombow Fudanusuke calligraphy brush pen. I thought I'd leave this clip in real time to show you that I am doing this quite slowly for this part. It's always good to keep your hand steady and go slowly for calligraphy. I will be creating more calligraphy videos in 2022 if that's something you're interested in. But for now, it just looks quite relaxing watching it in this slow motion. It's not slow motion, it's real life. I also made sure to include the national flower on this spread by using the rose in her hair. I added a few roses in her hair and on her dress. So it still looks similar to the original piece by Alphonse, but it's got a more modern touch in my own sort of style to it as well. Once I had all the line art down on the page, I actually wasn't sure whether to keep colouring it in. So I was going to leave it more line art based, and then I felt that it was lacking something. There wasn't enough contrast to make your eyes draw to her face. So then I started to build more markers around it, and although I wanted to keep with that simple colour palette, because I don't know if you've noticed so far, but I have been using quite simple colour choices. But the main choices for this whole setup was the blue, green, orange and pink. And so I tried to use those colours in the piece while being true to the reference as well, as true as I could be. And I think it really worked. Once I put in this black, I felt like, oh good, I can actually, my eyes are drawn to her now rather than getting lost in all that white space. So sometimes it's just good to go with your gut and give it a try and see how it works. So I'm really glad that I did that. And then no piece feels complete to me without some gold. So I got my trusty metallic gold Uniball Broad Signo gel pen in gold, my absolute favorite. I love this so much. Can't sing its praise enough. Not sponsored, but love it. And I just put that in quite a few places through the piece, and that just finished it for me. Then I was like, okay, now it's finished, and here I will show you how it's finished and the beautiful gold. And now we're moving to the next page in our setup, which is my Goodliness page. The Goodliness page is my funny word for good habit tracking. So my habit trackers go on this page alongside some pretty decoration. The Czech Republic is known for its beautiful castles and has over 2,000 to explore. Prague Castle is the largest in the world, taking up 70,000 square meters of the city. And although that one is beautiful, I chose to illustrate a different castle because it's absolutely magical, the appearance. This guy is called Buzov Castle, and it was built in the 14th century. And I chose this one because I thought it just looked so fairy tale-like and just spectacular with its terracotta roofs and towers. And then this beautiful wall surrounding it just seemed like it's completely alone, standing in the landscape. So I chose to illustrate that in the snow and put some hot air balloons above to finish off the experience that I would love to do right there. Now, as you can see, I'm illustrating this one with my Pigma Micron again, just using the black this time. And I've pre-printed out my habit tracker calendars, like my mini calendars for me, because it just takes a long time to write in all those numbers. And on this page in particular, I just don't like doing that. So I'd prefer to print them out and then just write my titles above each one. And here I'm titling the page with my Goodliness word in calligraphy. I also wanted to do a little mini border on this page to give it that ornate antique book feel. So I went for a couple of, I really like the top left and bottom right little patterns on the edges, but the bottom left and top right I totally screwed up. Well, actually I screwed up the bottom left one and then had to sort of copy that problem onto the top right. So that irritates me. So on the bullet journal theme for this country, you'll see that fixed. I'm just going to put the other two corners repeated in there because I can do that because it's digital. So much fun. And as for colouring, I'm using those Pitt Artist pens again, my mainly go-to markers, and I'm deciding to use a nice, very pale lilac colour and the really icy blue, and then the terracotta for the roofs, and just keep that because it's such a cool feeling in this of this castle because it's all in a nice snowy landscape. So I wanted to keep cool colours but still in that same collection of colours that we were using. And then it wasn't complete without some gold, so added the gold hot air balloons and a few gold highlights here and there, and this is how the page turned out. And now for the final page of this monthly setup, and that is my weekly spreads. So I now do just one weekly page that shows an illustration across the top or down the sides, depending on which format I want to go for. But I do like this horizontal format a little bit better because it allows me to write more on each page. So what you do is you just cut it in half down the center using a blade or an X-Acto knife, and then you can mark up your pages for the full month and still see that one illustration that you worked hard on. So I really like this style, and it just helps with the productivity for me personally. So the illustration that I'm doing on this page is a gorgeous place called Telch. And I don't know if you've noticed by now, but I do love drawing architecture, and when I saw these beautiful Renaissance and Baroque styled houses, they're just in this one like massive row of beautifully detailed house designs. I just had to draw them basically, and I wanted to keep them in that color palette, and they were so brightly colored, so I was able to use all of my color palette for this theme on these houses, which I thought just worked really nicely. And it's also across that landscape top, so it just worked really well for me. And I just think they've got a really fairy tale vibe about this town. It just has a fairy tale vibe. And yeah, it's just so cute. So it's a historic town centre where these are, and it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So I definitely would like to visit Telch when I get to Czech Republic one day. And the style that I'm drawing these in as well, I'm trying to keep it as sketchy and relaxed as possible. And if I'm being completely honest with you, I had to rush through this page. I was due down at my daughter's school for a presentation or something to do with Christmas. I remember rushing through it, and so I guess that was part of the reason that I decided to do a sketchy style. It wasn't completely in my control at the time, but I actually really like how it turned out. So the relaxed style with these particular houses just really worked for me, because you can't get every detail in them unless you want to spend hours and hours on it. So it was ideal just for that splash of color, a few detailed accents for the house silhouettes, and yeah, and you've got quite a nice spread. And I love the colors. They're just reminding me of really pastel sweets that you would find in a fairy tale, I think. So here's how the weekly pages ended up looking. And now it's time to look back through the theme that we've just created for the month of January 22. If you haven't subscribed to the channel and you enjoyed this video, please do consider subscribing and click the notifications bell so that you get warned of when I upload. That would really help me out if you also like the video below as well. So I would like to also take this opportunity to thank my newest patrons, which are Carrie T, Kitty C, Katya K, Dorothea M, and Karen P. Thank you so much for joining up on Patreon. There is more to come in 2022, and I'm super excited to invest more time in it. If you do want to check that out, I've got it down in the description box. And also, let's announce the winner for March. No, not March. I skipped a month. February. The announcement for February, the country we're going to visit, is a personal favorite of mine, so I'm very excited. It is Egypt. Thank you so much for voting and helping me choose that. I'm super excited to get started. So Merry Christmas, everyone. I hope you have a great one, and I will see you for more fairy tale art traveling fun in the new year. Bye bye.